Yes, good morning and welcome to this event with Neodynamics. My name is Henrik Ekman. I'm an analyst here at HC Capital, and with me today I have CFO Aaron Wong from Neodynamics to take us through the third quarter report that was released yesterday. Before we start, and I hand over the word to Aaron, you're very welcome to pass your questions below, and I will do my best to try and forward them to Aaron after the presentation. And also remember that this is being recorded, so we post it on various platforms afterwards. So with that, Aaron, I know you're very busy these days, and we're very happy that you have had the time to come to us and give us an update on both the short-term issues and longer-term business issues. But with that, a warm welcome, and I'll hand over the word to you, Aaron. Please go ahead.
Hi, Henrik. Good morning, and thank you very much for having me today. If I could just start off by addressing the situation that we're in to give a context to the presentation. Needless to say, it's a very challenging environment right now. I would say also that I'm quite disappointed with the situation that we found ourselves in. An accumulation of events leading up to where we are today. So I appreciate that we probably have some frustrated people on the line. I'm also one of those people, so I can fully understand where people are in their minds today. But I look forward to answering the questions to the best of my ability with the information I can provide today. So let's start off the presentation, and maybe we run through this fairly quickly, and then I can obviously open up to questions. So this is the first slide is Neodynamics in brief, and this is for people that may be new to the company. For those who are already aware of what we do, this is just a refresher then. We're a Swedish medical technology company based here in Stockholm, and we are listed on the Nasdaq First North. Neodynamics has developed a new and innovative pulse system, which we call the Neonavia. And this system is used to biopsy suspected breast cancer. And Neonavia has received CE approval in Europe, and more recently in September last year, we received FDA clearance in the US. So the third quarter in brief was really underpinned by our rights issue that we carried out shortly after the summer. And we raised approximately 58 million Swedish crowns before the deduction of transaction costs. And the issue was subscribed to approximately 80%, which obviously included guarantee commitments. And those subscribing by use of their rights corresponded to approximately 46%, and 31% or just under 32% was allocated to guarantors. In connection with the rights issue, we also launched 2 warrant programs, and these warrant programs were aimed at supplementing the rights issue in order to carry us through until next year. The warrant programs were structured in a way that would allow everybody to participate, which meant they had quite a low exercise price, which was at our quota value. And the important part of this call is obviously to update investors, to give them information to make an informed decision about the subscription this week. This morning, as I expected, we saw some softening of the share price based on yesterday's publication. We still have a few days to go, obviously, but let's see how the price settles for the remainder of the week. We announced our first order from a prestigious US university hospital specializing in the treatment of breast cancer. And something which we've been quite open with is that we don't really talk about the size of these orders because they're not really that important. What is important is the symbolic nature of these orders. So this milestone demonstrates that our product is commercially viable in the US. And we also announced the receipt of a new order from Western Rhineland-Palatinate Hospital in Germany, which is also a very distinguished hospital. And this is where it gets interesting. Most recently, we announced a cost reduction plan. The board of directors, together with the management team, have decided to streamline our operations. And this is a result of primarily the conditions in the market coupled with our ability to raise capital. We'll go into that a bit later. I'm sure we'll have questions surrounding what that really means. And then some additional information that was published yesterday in conjunction with the Q3 report. We're being open as we can about the situation, especially given the warrant program that we have running. If people can kind of read through the P&L, they can see our cash position at the end of Q3. Based on our run rate, I'm sure you can extrapolate out where we are today. I won't discuss exactly what our cash position today, simply is because we don't publicly provide that information. However, it's safe to say the company is stressed financially. But what I would also like to try to reassure shareholders is that we are working 24/7 to resolve this, myself included. I will be asked, I'm sure, what level of confidence I have in getting out of this situation. And what I would say is that I have to be positive that everybody's efforts to get the company this far are not in vain, both from a financial perspective of those people that have invested in the company, but also people within the company like myself and others that have been with the company for a long time, building this from essentially nothing into what we have today. People can criticize and critique that the time it's taken for us to get here has been too long. And I accept that criticism because I think it has been a long time to get here. However, I would also like to say that I'm proud of what we've done so far, especially since for those years I've been at least, and I can comment on. Getting to this stage with a headcount of under 20 people in an industry that has been affected since early 2021 by a market downturn hasn't been easy, and we very much tried to balance the speed that we can commercialize with the finances that we have available to us. It's not an easy task, but nevertheless, it's something that we've tried to do as best as possible. So if I start off with sort of the opportunities we see, we now have a full suite of needles that are available to our customers. For those that know, we have 3 needles: the FlexiPulse, which is the needle which has always been available and which was part of the FDA approval. And we have 2 other needles, the VacuPulse and the CorePulse. The VacuPulse was also FDA approved. The CorePulse is for now in Europe only. And we have approval in our key markets with no regulatory barriers to entry. I'd just like to reiterate that the FDA approval took only 7 months, which is fantastic, considering that some companies get either hung up on the FDA approval or don't get it at all. So the strength of our submission was good. And we also see that the market sentiment will hopefully shift in 2024. There are no guarantees to that, but with every downturn, you have to expect that there will be an upturn at some point. And we've been in a kind of bear market now in the biotech for some time, an extended and contracted period of time. So, we hopefully see that on the horizon. Underpinning at least how we see the product, we also have good clinical data to back our product's efficacy. It's no good as us just saying how great the product is. We obviously need our clinical data to support that. And in conjunction with that, and I'm kind of skipping down to the bottom point here, our KOLs believe this is true as well. Our KOL engagement and continued support in this field has been overall very positive. In the USA, which is the market that we are sort of most closely commercializing our product in, it represents 50% of the global market for biopsies. with an expected size of about 1.6 billion by 2030. So a huge market to address. And we won our first US order, which confirms, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, of its commercial viability in that market. Now, much can be said about our strategy or our tactics to get there. I believe our commercial strategy is correct. However, I believe our expectations on how quick that will happen are not. I think we've got a lot to learn for how long it took to get there. But yeah, it's we're at a kind of sticky point now where we've got a product which is fully available. We've got our KOLs in place. We've gaining traction in the market, but we have this problem around financing which we need to solve. And I'll leave the challenges we face to last. As I've alluded to, the market is difficult to raise capital. There is capital out there, but it comes at a cost, and that cost in some cases is extremely high. So we need to be able to balance that capital, both in the short term, but also in the medium to the long term, with our short-term squeeze in liquidity. The commercialization process has taken longer than we expected. Navigating through each hospital's administrative procedures has been quite complex and time-consuming, and each hospital that we approach, especially in the US, has their own way of doing their administrative procedures. There's obviously a framework of things you have to work through, but we have to tailor our approach to each hospital that we engage with. And also balancing the speed at which we commercialize with the finances that we have available has been tricky. There's sort of two ways you could see this, is that you have a sales force that's ready and the product is available, becomes available, and then you go out to the market, which is generally the case, rather than having a product that's available and nobody to sell it. So what we've seen this year, and this was outlined in the CEO comments, was that we've had delays to the core pulse and vacuum pulse. These delays have been a result of feedback that we've received from hospitals. We announced in April earlier this year that we'd gone out and delivered some of the product. And we saw that there were things that we could really refine to ensure that when we did go out in the US market, there were no issues. Because in the US, if you go out and your product isn't 110% where it should be, it's devastating for the product, and you really have a hard time to recover from that. So we had some small issues with the sharpness of the needle, which we've addressed now. And in the vacuum pulse, we have also improved the vacuum in the product, which sounds quite straightforward if you put it into the language that I'm using. I'm a finance guy, not a R&D guy, but actually it's quite complicated to make those types of adjustments. So that's where we are today. Yeah, so I welcome questions, comments, and I'll answer them, as I said, as best as I can.
Thank you very much, Aaron. And there are already questions in, and I fully understand your sort of frustration that you actually have a product in place that are out there approved and everything, but you have to spend a lot of time with these financial related short-term issues, and that perhaps is if we take this financial situation, is it there's a short term, there's discussion to solve it longer term, but then I guess there's also short term discussions. And what can you say about this in terms of when should people, because I know it's ongoing discussions, as I understand you. So what should investors think in terms of when you will know whether there's a couple of short-term solutions, or if the longer-term solution is there? When should they know? Are we talking weeks or days or?
Yes, weeks. I think that any information that we can provide to the market will happen in a couple of weeks' time, maybe even before that. Given the price of the share, I think it's unlikely we will have either any material upside in the warrant program this week, if anything at all, which means, yes, we do have to bridge the current situation into early next year. As I outlined, there is capital in the market available, but it comes at a very high price. I think most investors understand that. However,
is that bridge financing kind of solutions? Or?
Yeah, exactly. And investors probably understand the shorter the need for capital, the more expensive it gets. However, I think that everybody is committed to ensuring that the company survives into the long term. And I have no real concerns about the medium to long term strategy, because the upside in the business is quite significant. The financing is one part of it, but the commercial validation is the second part of it. And that very much gives me hope that next year we will see a significant amount of activity in the business. I've talked about the strategy that we have taken several times about working narrow and deep, and really that hasn't changed. We wanted to get the product into the market by ourselves. That was our whole goal. Work on the R&D, finalize the product, build a small sales team, and really lift it into the market, and then leverage that with a partner or a possible exit. It depends. It can be structured in many different ways. We wanted to be able to prove that we could do this, and really that part of the process adds a lot of value to any future partnership or potential acquirer. So even though we're in a situation where we have stressed finances and we're reducing down our headcount accordingly, and generally our cost base, I don't think that strategy has changed. It might have brought the goalposts a little bit closer to us in terms of needing to try to facilitate those options earlier than later. But we still very much will use the expertise we have on board to really get into the market. And if I just could, I want to just talk about a little bit more of the cost cut or restructuring, however you want to call it. For us, it's very important to maintain a presence on each of our markets because they're so inextricably interlinked. We've used the KOL engagement and the clinical studies that we've had in Europe to really springboard ourselves into the US. And as I've talked about on prior presentations, the KOL pool is actually quite small globally, but everybody talks to each other. We can't simply pull resources or all of our resources out of any one of the regions simply because it would have quite a significant knock-on effect to the other regions that were active. So what's been decided is that we will maintain a very, I don't want to call it a skeleton, but we'll maintain very, very limited resources in each of the markets to ensure that we can convert those orders that we press released in April into revenue.
So is that what you're talking about when you stated this, that you will be maintaining an appropriate presence in the market? So that is so as you have guided and as we all hope for, that you will start receiving orders, you will actually be able to process these orders in all regards. So it's the cost cutting exercise is not about shutting down. It's about balancing to the current situations, but you will still be able to process orders.
Yes, absolutely. That's incredibly important to emphasize, is that we're not shutting down. We are simply trying to balance what available resources that we have with our kind of strategic objectives. We have back orders. I won't go into detail about the value of the back orders. Again, it's mainly symbolic, and in hospitals, they don't really talk about the volume and the size of the orders. It's more the nature of them. And as we've seen earlier this year, our sales team in the US have done a fantastic job of actually getting into these hospitals. It's not easy. It really isn't easy if you don't have the right connections, and we do have the right connections. We're proud to have been able to demonstrate the product to MSK, which we have shared through LinkedIn. This demonstration was very warmly received, and if anybody knows Memorial Sloan Kettering, as it's called, they are the top cancer center in the US. So we've demonstrated to a number of different tier 1 hospitals in the US. All of them have come back and said, this product is great. You know, we've not seen any advancements in our sector for years. So that gives me confidence that there's appetite out there for our product. The transition between appetite and putting an order down and getting revenue obviously is another conversation, but I'd be more worried if we'd gone out and people have said, yeah, great product, but you know what, we're sort of on the fence. So that's what I cling to, and it's much more than hope. It's confidence in the product, really.
And perhaps you could just elaborate a little bit on that process in terms of getting to conferences, doing the first pitches, and receive the good feedback, receiving some, you call them some symbolic orders, and then ultimately it turns into real orders. What is the length of that process? And it's a question here whether we should expect any US orders, meaning I guess real orders before year end. So just take us through that process, perhaps.
Yes, two very good questions. So the way that the process works is that our key account managers schedule meetings with key opinion leaders, normally the head of radiology, sometimes breast surgeons, and they go in and they demonstrate the product. And at that point, I would say almost 100% of the people that we're demonstrating the product to have agreed to what's called a pilot study. And that pilot study earlier in the year was sort of two months long, and we give the pilot centers the opportunity to test the product, after which they make the decision to place an order. Now we've condensed down that pilot study length quite significantly as we've kind of trailed into the second half of the year. Once they've basically placed the order, it's all about delivering the product, and that's kind of where we've fell a bit short, I think, this year in our ability to get the product to the market. And it's a bit of a funny, I'll say funny one. It's not really funny. It's quite depressing, really. But in the US, they love the FlexiPulse, but they also want the VacuPulse. In Europe, they really want the Core Pulse and the VacuPulse, not necessarily the FlexiPulse. And that's due to the dynamics in the market and really how the payer system is set up. So we've got products ready, but alternative markets want alternative things. That being said, so the second part of the question was the US and sort of whether we will see orders. And my answer to that is I'm highly confident we will. The process in the US is slightly longer. Anybody who knows the US, it's sort of a litigation cobweb, entanglement. You have to be extremely careful when you do things, and everything has to go through legal departments, whether that's contracts that need setting up, whether that's procurement. Everything needs somebody legal to take a look at these things. So that's where we've found the longest lead time in the process is actually getting the legal departments to agree to things, and it's normally a back and forth situation. Coupled with that, their kind of credit evaluation committee meets on certain points in the year. Some hospitals meet several times in the year, some meet once per year. In order to get basically an order, you have to have the committee agree that the product has clinical validation, or however you want to call it. And you kind of have to wait for that committee to come up. So in some cases with bigger hospitals, it might be more frequent. With smaller hospitals, it could take a little bit longer. But I very much believe that we will have US orders this side of the year, given that our VacuPulse is imminently going out to customers, and our FlexiPulse is already in the market. And as I say, feedback has been extremely positive.
Okay, and just to understand this, so you're suggesting that the demand for different types of needles is depending on the reimbursement scheme structure, or how should we understand it? Because I guess the ultimate medical need that you're trying to solve is the same.
Yeah, exactly. But I would say that different hospitals have different specialities, and what they can use the needles for, and which ones they prefer to use the needles for. In the US, they use a lot of fine needle aspiration, which is something that we know that the FlexiPulse can really deliver better results on. And in Europe, the Core Pulse is kind of the staple of the product suite. It just so happens that as I said, the reimbursement, the way it's set up is that really where the money is earned is in the US, because of the kind of cost containment they have in Europe.
Okay, So if you're starting to get these orders, and what about delivery? Is it do you have everything in place? Because I know you have this the provider where you get your stuff produced. You do have a lot of stock there, right? So is that available for immediate delivery if you get these orders, or how should we understand that process?
Yes, 100%. So we have stock available to fulfill orders, because I think it would be super frustrating if we started to receive a waterfall of orders and then we weren't able to satisfy those. So yes, we have stock for those orders. One thing that I think I should make the audience and the shareholders aware is that lead times in the manufacturing industry, specifically with components that make up medical devices, is getting longer and longer. Large suppliers such as Sanmina, the one we work with, which is a global supplier, are now demanding up to 18 months of lead time for some components. And they are not willing to take any risk on these, which means that we are forced into a situation where we have to prepay a lot of our components. For a company like ours, that is really tough. That is really, really tough. Well, I think one thing, once we are in a position where we have more regular orders, we will revisit the situation with our key suppliers and try to organize them in a more effective way, so that we are not sort of tying up cash in an unnecessary manner.
What in this when you are in this situation with financial constraints, and you have this commercialization strategy where you try to do everything yourself, or do the approach yourself. Would it be feasible to also engage or consider a distribution partner strategy in some regards, to both to save money but also to get quicker and broader access to potential clients?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. One of the things I think potential suppliers are looking for is commercial traction before they engage with a company like ours. So it's kind of a chicken and the egg. They want to see. Okay. We obviously would welcome some sort of partner to help us distribute and sell into the markets and kind of lift us from a resource perspective. But at the same time, we need to get on their radar. So I think actually now is a perfect time for them to see actually that we are kind of converting on those milestones that we've set ourselves.
Okay, and also in light of the financial constraints situation, the cost-cutting program. Now, when is that kicking in? Is that helping you at all at this point, or is it more a longer-term run rate that would be secured? So how should we understand the effect of that and the magnitude of that cost-cutting program?
Yes. If I could start with the commitment from the management team and some of its employees, we've actually deferred salaries in November. So the teams are willing to work knowing that we will make them whole again when we have the available finances. And I think that's an important part to emphasize. It shows the commitment of the people we have on board to really making this happen. So we will see an immediate effect on the cash burn rate. It will be probably, I'll keep using the word symbolic, but it won't be material until we actually have worked through the notice periods of those that have been given notice. I expect that we will see a more significant effect towards the end of Q1, beginning of Q2. We're talking about a reduction, a quite significant reduction from what we have today. We have a run rate of about 6 million Swedish crowns, and I won't give an exact figure, but we're looking to make quite a significant reduction in that.
Okay. Time is more or less running out, but there are these questions. I guess if you could sort of have some final remarks to this, as we discussed earlier, this frustration that what's going on. You have the potential orders, but do you have the financial runway to get them? And there's also some questions regarding management credibility and that. Could you just share with us some final comments on this?
Yeah, I just want to say that I understand the frustrations. I understand the disappointment. I myself am a shareholder, maybe not as large a shareholder as some of our shareholders that are listening today. So for me to see the situation, it's quite disappointing, to say the least. Investors, I talked last time about the investor profile, and sort of the return on investment for Neodynamics is not a short one. For those who are willing to hold on and to see the story through, it's a medium to long term investment strategy. So that I can be quite candid with. In terms of just summing up, I would say I believe in the product, very much so. I have to remain positive that we will solve this situation. I think, as I mentioned before, people have spent too much time and too much money for this not to be overcome. However, there's no guarantees, but we are working 24/7 to resolve this. And I would also invite any shareholder that has any kind of more specific questions to really reach out to me directly. My contact details are on the website, and just give me a call, and I can speak to who needs to be spoken to.
Okay, Aaron. So with that, thank you very much for spending the time with us. I know you're very busy, as said. So we all cross our fingers and hope for the best that these current discussions bear fruit in a very near future. So we will all be looking forward to hear more about that. And thank you to the audience for all the questions. And as said, we will post this on various platforms afterwards. So thank you and have a good day.